Hey everybody, it's Kyla at the MJC again, and I am here this time to walk you through more of the asset section. In this video, we're going to go from automobiles all the way through this other personal property part of the financial disclosure statement. But before we get started, as always, just a reminder that nothing in this video is intended to be legal advice. It's obviously a video, so I'm not able to analyze your specific situation to tell you whether what you're doing is in your best interest, what you should ask for in your situation, or what a court is likely to approve. And so if you have questions about those sorts of things, I would definitely recommend getting some legal advice. You can get brief legal advice for free here in Milwaukee County through the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. If you aren't located in Milwaukee County, you can contact the clerk of court for your area or for your county to see what resources are available in your area. All right, great. So we'll start on this in a second. One thing I will let you know, just as an opening bit of information, is if you are continuing your divorce part 2 as either jointly, so you started jointly and you plan to continue jointly, or if you started separately but now you plan to continue together, we call that process stipulated. If you're doing it either of those ways, you need to make sure that from here on out, from automobiles on, your financial disclosures do what we call mirroring each other. And what that means is if I list a car on my financial disclosure, the other person will list that same car on their financial disclosure. Even if it is mine and we both agree it is mine and we're not fighting over it, we're still going to list it on both financials. All right, and I'll try and explain that as we're going through on everything. All right, well, let's jump into this. This automobile section, it's obviously where you will fill in if you have a car. And some people will include like motorcycles and things there. Some people will do them as other personal property. So again, do you consider it an automobile? If so, I would include it here. If you don't have anything in any of these sections, just put none in like that and then skip to the next section. But remember, if you're doing it jointly or stipulated, then you'll want to include your ex's cars too. So you might not have a none, you might include their car. But we're going to go ahead and fill it in. So let's say that you start with the year, the make, and the model of your car. So for example, Jane might have a 2012 Honda Accord, and that we've got there. Then here we're going to put whose name it is titled in. So it can either be A, which is the petitioner, or if you file jointly, this is joint petitioner A. B, which is the respondent, or if you filed jointly, that's joint petitioner B. Or T, which is together. So here, if it's titled in both Jane and John's names, then we'll check T for together. And here we're going to put whose possession it's currently in. So who is driving it? Whose driveway is it in? We'll check A. And then here, amount owed, so what you owe on it, will go here. And a rough value of what you think that vehicle is worth. So if you sold it on Craigslist, what would you ask for it? You can also look up the Kelley Blue Book value. That's totally fine. But just here, a pretty good estimate of what you think it's worth. And so if Jane were filling this out on her own, she's not planning to go forward with John jointly. If she knows the information about John's car, you would still include it. So if you know your ex drives a 2015 Toyota Highlander, you would include that there. Maybe or if you're not sure, so if you know they have a car, but you're not sure what, you could put, ex-husbands, or I guess they're not your ex yet, so you could just call it husbands Toyota. Or maybe you just know it's a truck. You don't even know the kind, just as much as you know. So if you know they have a car, you might include that. Put as complete of information as you have and can get about the other person's stuff. And again, if you're doing this jointly, then you'll want to make sure, if Jane and John are going forward jointly and John listed a car on his, we'll do a 4Runner, then you'll include that here as well. And we'll say that was just titled in his name and in his possession, and he owes, I don't know, 500 on it, and he thinks it's worth 5,000. All of that there. All right. So then the next is insurance. So this is where if you have life insurance, you will include that. And it wants the name of the underlying company. So a lot of people have life insurance through their job, but here you're not going to put the name of your job. So you won't put through, Acme Corp. You're instead going to put the name of the company that does the life insurance. So like Progressive or Northwestern Mutual or American Family, or whatever the name of the company that has the policy is. And then here you're going to put whose life insurance policy it is. And I will note that here in Milwaukee, we typically don't put the policy number, at least not here at the Justice Center. If you want to include the policy number, that's great. More information is always great. But if you don't have that policy number, again, we typically aren't including it, although it is helpful if you have it. Here, you're going to put whose policy that is. So let's say Jane has this Northwestern Mutual policy through her job, Jane. And who the beneficiary is. So the beneficiary is who would get paid. Life insurance pays out if you die. Who would get paid if you die? So maybe it's their kids, Susie and Sally Smith. Face amount is what does it pay out if you were to die. So that's if you tell someone, I have a $100,000 life insurance policy. That's that number. So what does it pay out if you were to die? And cash value here wants to know if there's any value today. So not if you die, but just right now as we speak. Cash value for term life is always going to be 0 because term life usually doesn't have inherent value now. It just pays out if you die. But if you have whole life, something you can borrow against, it probably does have some cash value and you would want to put that amount. If you don't know that amount, typically you can get that amount by either contacting, if it's through your employer, your HR department most likely, or if it's just one you got independently, contacting either the broker you got it through or the underlying company. Business interest, that's where if you own an LLC or an S Corp or a sole proprietorship, you will list that. So Jane's Flowers, maybe she has a little flower business here. And do remember with all of this, if the other person is listing something or if you know they have something, go ahead and list theirs as well. For the joints, you have to do that. Just convenient for everybody else to do that. Type of business, if it's an LLC or an S Corp, a sole proprietorship, whatever your type of business is. Percent of ownership, so if you have a partner, it might be 50-50. If you are the only person and you own all of it, here. And then here, your value minus indebtedness. So basically what the company's books and property and all of that, minus any debts it owes. So if it owns a mortgage or anything, what that would be. And again, if you have questions about calculating that or what that should look like, you could definitely talk to an attorney to get some advice about how to best value your business. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, commodity accounts, here anything that you have. So, and that does include employee things. So if you worked at, say, Walmart and you have, 50 shares or whatever, 10 shares, 1 share, you'd put that there. And then again, who owns it? So maybe John has those. And a rough estimate of the value today. So you could look up what the stock is trading for and estimate it that way. Or you could check with, again, whoever you have that account through and see roughly what it's worth that way. And again, as with any of this, if you don't have any stocks, bonds, mutual funds, anything like that, you're just going to put none in this very first box. Here, pensions or retirement accounts, just like life insurance, we want to make sure you use the name of the company that the account is through, not the company that you work for if it's one through your job. So, for example, if I work for Acme Corp, but Acme Corp isn't the person doing the 401ks, the 401ks are through Vanguard or Voya or Northwestern Mutual or whoever, I want to list the company that does those 401ks. So, for example, maybe it's through Voya. And you'll list what it is. So it might be a 401k. Maybe it's a 403b. There are lots of different plans that could be. And you'll indicate whose it is. So Jane has that. Percent vested. If your employer does an employer match, The percent vested is basically how much of that match you're entitled to if you stopped working for the company. Some places have that, it's a very simple number, some it's complicated. So you'll put that if you know it or if you can get it. If not, just leave that line blank. And then here you do need to get a valuation of what that 401k is worth or what that retirement account is worth. You should be able to get that from the HR from your company. And what you'll do is here, usually on evaluation, it'll say as of date, your account is worth amount. And so that date, that as of date, we're going to put here. And the amount that it says it's worth, we're going to put here. And then same thing, if you'll do this for if you have IRAs. And again, you want the underlying company if possible. So like Primerica, I think I've spelled that right. Roth IRA. And maybe that's John's. Again, if there's a percent vested, you'll include that information. Maybe his is a little older. And then again, just rough estimate of what it is. And for pensions, typically there is an underlying company for those. So it might be the employee retirement system or something like that. And again, if you do have a pension and you're not sure of the company name you're supposed to put, your HR should be able to provide you with that information. For bank accounts, you'll put the name of the bank. So U.S. Bank or Chase or the credit union, Landmark Credit Union, Associated Bank, any of those sorts of things. And here you'll put whose account it is, so maybe they have a joint account still. And you'll put what kind of account it is, so a checking or a savings or a money market account. We'll say this is a checking. Ideally, you want to put the last 4 digits of the account number. Make sure you don't want it to be more than the last 4 because some of this is public record, and so you don't want that whole account number out there. And then here you just want to put what the balance is today as we speak. And then if you have multiple accounts, again, you'll put multiple accounts. So if they also had a savings, we would put in a savings, or if it's from somewhere else. Maybe this one's from Landmark, and it's just in John's name, and it's a savings. Again, the last 4 digits. And the balance today. Last but not least, we have this other personal property section. That's for anything that hasn't fit into either this household item section that we filled out or any of these categories we went through just now. And, other personal property can either be something that's worth something, so you want to get it down, or maybe it's really important to you, Great Aunt Ida's salt shakers or what have you. If you do fill that out, you'll put what it is. Or maybe it's family pictures or whatever it is. You'll put that here. You'll put who it belongs to. And then what type of property it is. So, it's personal property, or we could describe it more. We could call them salt shakers. Whatever you think best describes that type of property. And then here, a rough estimate of what they're worth. So what you think the value is of that item. Other things that sometimes show up in personal property, if you have pets, so maybe they have a dog, who owns the dog, type of property is a pet. And evaluation, again, it's obviously you can't put a price on your pets, but a rough estimate of, maybe what an adoption fee would be, or if it's a purebred, what that animal would be worth. All right, well that is it for those sections. I will be back to finish up the assets section of the financial disclosure and to get into the other sections as well to finish this document up. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope that this was helpful. If it wasn't, you can always come into the Milwaukee Justice Center and we can give you more information on filling this all out. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and go out and represent yourselves well.